Hey friends, stay tuned. I'm going to show you 5 ways to make your epoxy come out better, less bubbles, things like that. Let's do this. Alright friends, while I mix up this next tabletop epoxy to cover this second cookie, let's talk about the problems and the mistakes I did on my first deep pour epoxy on this one right here. Take a look. So yeah, you can see all those bubbles down there. So number one problem is bubbles, but what it did that I had no control over was crack right through the middle. And this second one did kind of a small version of that, not so dramatic across the whole thing. But so that is what I was hoping on this one would not happen, because I poured probably a third of it and it worked out great, and then I did the next 2/3 on this one and it still cracked. So trying to take bite off more than we can chew, I guess. It advertises 4 inches, but I'm guessing on this super clear epoxy deep cast, the 4 inches is a pretty high claim. You need the perfect conditions and all of that. So that was me being too greedy, I guess. So I think I can bypass and solve this problem on the 3rd cookie by just doing a 1/4 inch at a time. And it comes out really clear. You can't see the layers between that if they're all just clear. Okay, look, going back to that first one there, you see the issue of darkness. It's too dark, right? So you really got to be careful when you're going down inside of something like that to make sure the darkness is the accent, not the theme, right? Not the major tone. So I need to go make everything light and just add the dark accents in there. Maybe 25% of it could be dark. Everything else needs to be light, especially the floor down the bottom. Right, and that's what happened was we poured in the epoxy on this nice green, bright green moss. Well, this is a living thing, and it soaked up the epoxy in there and just went dark instantly. And I was like, oh no, then I was like hoping it would get lighter, but of course it's not. And so that was what really hurt that one from being a nice bright scene down in there. And then then that bottom layer was cast and done and couldn't do anything about it. So I went ahead and filled it up, and then that's the part that cracked, that top 3/4. I probably was like almost 3 inches there. And something else interesting about this epoxy is what I'm going to call late casting bubbles, right? So it's a 72-hour curing time, and what happened was the first day I come, it looks great, totally clear, beautiful. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. So that's the first full day. I go to bed, I come out in the morning, come check it out, and it's got all these bubbles all over in it, plus the cracks that you see that popped open. And these bubbles, the pull away from the sidewall, some bubbles that popped out. Very strange. I'm not sure what to do about that. Even on this one, the shark side is very clear, as you can see, but the seal side has some funny bubbles down deep. Kind of works because it's all water situated, so it looks like water bubble running around and jumping around in there. But there's funny bubbles, and there's micro bubbles coming up from underneath maybe the shells, which are actually underneath the seal, because the shells were already cast in the first round. And so these late bubbles will come up. You think it's all great, and then out of nowhere you have a stream of bubbles coming up. They're the epoxy expands, pushes into an area where there's air, and pushes that air out, and it bubbles up right along the edges or underneath something, your character, something you have in there, right? So this is why people always say do your seal coat, right? Brush everything on there and lock everything in and stop bubbles from coming out. Kind of like if you watch my full video on this, I put wood putty in all the cracks. So when I put this coat in on top of here, I don't get a bunch of bubbles coming out, right? So those are the 2 biggest issues, getting too dark on my diorama. It got using live things like the moss and it got dark. And then these late bubbles that come up, going too deep and getting in the crack. And so, big steep learning curve here. We're coming out of it. So I'm really hoping this 3rd one will be just like the bomb. So totally clear. Although I'm surprised the shark came out perfectly clear there, almost 3 inches, 2.5 there, and no problems. It's funny that maybe the more things you have in the epoxy, the more it affects how it's cooling down and how it's curing or whatever. And so there was more bubbles in there around the seal. All right. So the next one, same thing, but we're gonna go maybe a 1/4 inch at a time, or maybe 1 inch at a time, and hopefully avoid these stresses in there that create the crack on the second half of the 72 hours. All right, so I hope that helped on the super cast. Let me grab one right here. This is what we're using. It's called Super Clear Tabletop Epoxy. So because of this issue, I am not going to be scared to go try a different brand, see if I have different results. I might try a deep pour again with a different brand. My humidity, my climate, it's summertime, it's like 95 degrees, you know, around here, and they really don't want you over 85 when they tell you to do all this stuff. So notice I'm stirring my tabletop very slowly, because the tabletop is thicker and whips up bubbles in there, and they're hard to get out if you don't have a chamber, what do you call it, vacuum chamber, to pull the bubbles out like a lot of people have. That's how they're getting them so clear. I don't have that yet. So I'd love to drop this in, pull bubbles out, and then pour it. Comes out beautiful. So I'm being super careful in my stirring right now because I don't have any bubbles in there. And we're gonna go with that. All right, so the smaller the amount, the more bubbles that you whip up in there. I found the clear, the deep pour, no problem with bubbles in the bucket. I can whip them all up, they all rise to the top, even if it's really small. And it's just here within an hour, it's totally clear. There's no more bubbles in there. But if you take too much, it cracks and you get these other bubbles I'm talking about. So I'll show you when I pour this final piece, and we'll see how it comes out. Thanks guys. Hey, if you found this interesting and useful, please subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel and watch how we make these cool dioramas and this cool furniture. Alright friends, that's it for Jason's Design Shop. Have a great day. Don't forget to click that subscribe and notification so you keep seeing when cool stuff comes out that we produce. Alright, have a great week. Bye.